One more kiss.
If you're looking for a small town to get away and ease your mind of the hustle and bustle of the big city, then I recommend going to Northern Ohio. There they have a small town by the name of Vermilion. This slice of peace and tranquility is snuggled right up at the water's edge of Lake Erie. With at least 15 restaurants in town, and a plethora of little tourist shops, well-kept parks, and a magnificent library, the town is not without places to see, food to taste, and events to experience. Additionally, you can even explore a few of the town's historical locations that have been distinctly labeled for your convenience. However, if you should run out of things to see, don't worry, the local railroad sends approximately 25 trains a day right through the center of town. So, you won't get bored. Yet, with all these amazing sights that the town has to offer, little do they mention of one item in particular that I consider to be the most fascinating of all the sights that the town has up its sleeve. If you drive just a few miles south of Main Street, down a few sketchy two-lane roads, mainly Gore Orphanage Road, lies a site that is both rich in town history and urban legends. Follow along the long and windy road, over an art-covered bridge, and around the bend, lies the foundation of a past long since abandoned. As you approach the groves of trees on the right, just next to the cornfield, sits the weathered and almost unrecognizable foundation. This is the remnants of the Swift Mansion. The Swift Mansion was originally built in 1840, setting both a precedent for both its time and the location. The mansion stood proud in the hollow, with its backyard filled with trees that stand to this very day and the local Vermilion River running freely just behind them. The owner and builder was a businessman from Massachusetts by the name of Joseph Swift. Little is really known about Swift aside from his business ventures that led him to be a wealthy man in the railroad industry. However, not much can be said for him or the background of his family prior or after the building of the mansion. The mansion that Swift built was affectionately named Rosedale. With its towering white columns, distinguished molding, wide front porch, large windows, and 2 fireplaces, this extravagant piece of architecture was one that people came from far and wide to pine over. However, the mere location of the mansion must have been a nightmare for stone and lumber deliveries while construction was taking place, since there was, and really still is, no easy way to access this site, which, to be fair, the road used to go all the way up around the hill, on the cliffside, but erosion over the years has caused the road to be impassable. Thus causing the city to block it off permanently. Built what was then known as Gore Road, this mansion, seen through what is left of the original pictures of this once beautiful home, are really quite breathtaking, even by today's standards. The mansion was so mesmerizing and grand that architects would travel just to come, look at it, study it, and give their approval. Regrettably though, as there are with many great pieces of work, there were critics. Mostly due to the nature of the mansion regarding its owner and more importantly, the location. This was widely criticized at the time by the locals, whom in turn nicknamed it Swift's Folly. To be fair, the location was really not the most ideal place for this high-class lady known as Rosedale. Yet, nonetheless, this would not hinder the legacy which was set forth from the very start. If you fast forward to the early 1920s, we see that Joseph Swift had long since moved out along with his family. The home was essentially abandoned after being allegedly associated with the Light of Hope Orphanage. Note the now Gore Orphanage Road. There is some backstory, however, on the Light of Hope Orphanage and its supposed involvement with the mansion and a fire that was rumored to have taken the lives of both children and one adult. As for the fire-related deaths, I assure you all are false. They are just a myth. The only real evidence that there was ever a fire was the printing building that was located on the same property as the orphanage. That was it. No children died, nor any adults. In fact, the orphanage itself never burned down, just the printing building. However, there is a gloomy side to this story. In the early 1920s, after the Swift Mansion had been long since abandoned, some influential folks in Vermilion were in the midst of rallying together to raise funds and create awareness to help restore this quote-unquote Lady of the Valley. However, as tragedy would see, on December 6, 1923, the mansion mysteriously caught fire and sadly was burned to the ground. This was a devastating blow for both the community as well as the Awareness Board. The legacy that this glorious mansion had left behind was a footprint of gargantuan proportions. This architectural landmark had been reduced to ashes, leaving behind only a few straggling reminders of the mansion that was. Although no official word or file has been given as to why this beloved masterpiece in the woods was subject to such a fiery death, rumors at the time circulated that it was due to potential arson. The incident brought not only the loss of a prominent Vermilion home, but also the loss of a unique piece of architecture. In retrospect, the Swift Mansion was not built in the most ideal place in Ohio, in terms of access and location. And yet, when you visit the site today, you do not get the vibe of a creepy and spooky that one would think of a burned-down mansion, or a burned-down home. Instead, you almost feel sorry for the once glamorous and sophisticated home. Upon walking the grounds today, or in this case the ruins, there is a quietness that fills the air. Chipmunks can be seen scurrying around, squirrels can be seen jumping from branch to branch. The ground itself is mostly covered in leaves and plants. On the property today, there are a few paths that form into a small trail that lead to the river. This is due mainly to people coming to visit the site, or hike in the local woods, or even fish on the riverbank. Interestingly enough, on the riverbank there is a man-made levee. It would appear that most likely Joseph Swift did this to prevent any flooding caused by the river that may affect the mansion. Truly a forward thinker. Although the land is mainly comprised of solid dirt and good soil, there is evidence to show that the ground located in what was the center of the house is sinking. Although there is no documentation that there was ever a basement, it has been the subject of some discussion. The adjoining cornfield, when in bloom, provides a wall of corn stalks from the road all the way to the levee. When you stand in the center of the ruins and look towards the cornfield, you are actually looking north, directly to the lake. Today the location is layered with fallen trees, graffiti paint, and the sandstones of the original foundation. What is left of the original foundation has been slowly falling into disrepair and is weathering away with each passing year. By looking at the rate of deterioration, I suspect the sandstone blocks will be there for at least another 100 years. The trees will continue to populate the ruins as nature slowly but surely reclaims the overall scene. And with the exception of the road that goes at the top of the hill, the landscape has held up really well considering. However, in the early 1950s, a man by the name of George Ritter donated well over $150,000 to construct a new library in Vermilion, Ohio. As construction approached in 1958, it was released that George Ritter liked Swift's design so much that he decided to model the new library building exactly like the Swift Mansion. Not long after this announcement, a local newspaper was quoted to have said, "One of Ohio's prominent early homes will live again." And live it has. For over 6 decades, it has been one of the finest distinguishing factors in the small harbor town known as Vermilion. To this day, many have no idea that when they set foot in the library, they are setting foot into a real-life success story that's original design was dreamt up over 170 years ago in Swift's Hollow. Having come from being the lady of the valley to becoming the lady of the city, this magnificent piece of architecture truly has been given a second chance to be seen, loved, and admired for as long as her pillars will stand.